JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. May 5th, 2025. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Talk quick about the market. Some names I'm looking at go from the S&P futures in the red, nearly down, well, about 0.75% right now. Uh, After the epic, historic 9-day rally, right? The markets S&P closed 9 sessions in a row to the upside. That hasn't happened since November 2004. And if we start looking at if we close green today, that'll be 10 sessions in a row. That hasn't happened since early 1990s. I'm trying to find the exact date, somewhere in there. But busy week this week. Obviously, we get the Fed on Wednesday. We get the Fed statement press conference. Market's pricing like a 1% probability that there'll be a rate cut. It would probably shock the market, so you don't want to see that. Then we get data. So 10 o'clock today, we get the ISM data for April. So we start getting some hard data, and then we also have a slew of earnings. Right, there's like 1,244 companies reporting earnings this week, so it's going to be a fun one. And just wouldn't be surprised to see the gap this morning down. Of course, I would love to see a, a gap higher and run. I just to me, it's tough to rationalize, or at least to look at the market and say, hey, we can rally to new all-time highs here in the coming weeks. I think outside of some major trade deals happening, I don't think that would be a possible outcome. So hopefully some chop here. If we do find some weakness, we hold that 50-day moving average down there at 556 on a SPY. If that holds up, earnings have been great, right? I think what was 2/3 of the S&P have reported so far, 7%, with over 7% over estimates, or over guidance, sometime. So strong earnings, like a majority of the names have bested estimates. And then the ones that you would be concerned around, the Googles, the Amazons, the Apples, the Metas, the Microsofts, they all kind of like mitigated some of the concerns around the tariff side. So certainly, and then you also have the product side of things, right? And some of these names, like I look at Wayfair, and Wayfair reported great quarter. So that's that. I POTUS over the weekend. It was funny. You thought that Netflix would be immune to the tariffs. In my opinion, I thought actually they might benefit. If there is kind of a slowdown, they might win because people are probably going to cut the cord. It's probably going to be more viewer hours, things like that. And even without a recession, they're going to do well. And then, sure enough, he announced the possibility of slapping $100 tariff, 100% tariffs on movies made abroad. I don't know exactly the implications for Netflix, and I don't think the market does either. But it is down. Well, it's down $56, so it was down over 4%. Just we'll have to see how that all plays out, but certainly ruffles some of the feathers, right? It's stirring that sector up, because it's not something, we've the tariffs have been talked about on a product side, but no one's really talked about the services side of things, right? So besides banning, right? China banning US movies or whatever. All right. So in regards to the SPY, that's why I put on the watch list, watching that 50-day moving average. The 200-day moving average right there, it's 570. Looked like if the market was open for another 2 hours on Friday, we probably would have hit 570, but that didn't happen. But that would be resistance if we do really find a nice reversal today, tomorrow. And yeah, to me, I think the best case scenario here is consolidation before the next leg, right? Sometimes these record moves, that they become opportunities, right, for maybe the bears to come in, or something like that. So probably, sometimes I hate record runs because it's almost like sometimes I hate gap hires. They just they're harder to play, right? Because most times stocks hit highs in the morning and then melt for the rest of the day. So that's that. And then overall markets, take a look at the amount of stocks trading over there. 200-day moving average on the S&P, big bump up on Friday, almost near that 50% mark. Once those names over there, 200-day moving average and 50-day, I think that sets up a trend, at least longer term trend, depending any crazy shenanigans. All right, individual names, and I'll stick to GLP-1 names. I posted that article in Times. I don't know if you saw it over the weekend. That came out in the middle of April, but a nice little behind the scenes story on Eli Lilly, and it just shows you the whole GLP-1 situation and the addressable market and the growth and the opportunities, and their all GLP-1 solution that is probably going to change the space as a whole. And just a great article, but it's still, I think the GLP-1 space is on the midst of like one of those, the next run to the upside. And they have had a huge run. I mean, take a look at GPCR since the middle of April. It's pretty much almost a double. But I think it has more legs, and you have the backdrop of possible M&A, which can happen any minute. So still like this one. Lock some more of my calls out for over 200% on Friday. I'll probably lock the rest of the Mays in this week, just because I don't want to see premiums come out if we stay flat. And then I'll look for later dated strikes. VKTX, another strong day on Friday, up 2.6%. It was over $30 for most of the morning before pulling back. Similar to GPCR, I'm going to lock the rest of my May strikes in. They're still close to a double. And then add some later dated strikes. Similar, I think there's going to be some M&A. So if it happens, GPCR, VKTX are two names. Obviously, you have Altimmune and Turner, two other great options there. Um, Wayfair and RH on Friday, rallying on the news that China was weighing fentanyl concerns as an option to help help to stoke the trade war conversation with the U.S. Uh, I think some of these names should be running regardless. You take a look at Wayfair's earnings last week. I think they were strong, all in the face of everything that's going on. So I think some of the move on Friday was up another 7%, was on just on continuation. The other is on trade deal hopes, right? And I think if there's any positive outcomes with Vietnam and China, I mean, Wayfair is going to be into the mid to high 40s, if not higher. So got those strikes into this week. I was able to lock some of the calls in for over 100%. I'll just hold the rest. Don't want to see it break under that 50-day 32.24, but hopefully if that holds, then I think it heads over 35 and beyond this week. Same with Restoration Hardware. I've been playing this off and on for the last couple of weeks as a play on at some point some resolution with the trade war. Rallied up 6% on Friday, again on hopes of a deal, but I think it rallies regardless. Tried some of the lotto calls, was able to lock some in for over 100%. Fortunately, it just stuck at 200 pretty much for the rest of the afternoon to the end of the day. And then I went and got some strikes into this week, and I was able to close some of those in for over 100% and held the rest. I think it trades up north to 215 in the coming days, so I'll continue to hold those. And, I keep saying it, and hopefully I'm into calls when it happens, but the CEO is going to do something. It's going to be a buyback, special dividend. Other names, I added those exact science calls. I'm not going to add any more strikes or average, but I do like this name, and I've talked about it was one of my top 5 stocks back in the day. I think it's a great story. Not only that, it looks like finally the company is on the path for strong growth. So I think it trades up into the mid 55s, mid 50s, and then hopefully once it breaks 55, it can start melting towards $60. And then other names. So Reddit, just so disappointing on Friday. It looked like there was going to be a reversal. I grabbed the calls. I locked some in for over 100%, held the rest, and then it just fizzled, right? And then it once broke 120 into the afternoon. It just couldn't find footing. And just the stellars came in. And then you look this morning, another upgrade. I mean, it's a boutique firm, right? Seaport Global. I think they cover SE, but needless to say, I still like this one as it's one of the best growth stories in the market right now, right? 60% growth, crazy margins, like 90-something percent margins. Holding its 200-day moving average 116. So like if you can get over that, I think it's off to the races. Premiums are down, so it might be a playable name, but obviously gets more playable as the week progresses. But definitely a name I'll continue to look for opportunities to play for calls. Travel Zoo, disappointing in the last 2 sessions. Both were green, but I would have thought it would be reversing, heading back over 15 and beyond. Once it finds its footing, I'll be adding more strikes. Still love this story, and I think people just don't understand how their new freemium to premium model is really going to help drive revenue and growth. Other name, Shopify reports this week. It's back near $100. I mean, it's had back huge earnings reports, and the stock is, it was 130 back before the tariff. Well, as the tariff situation started to peek its head, right? And then the back and forth between the U.S. and Canada. I think that's some of the reason why the name has really struggled. But I think that one heads higher soon. So premiums are expensive, but don't be surprised if I trade that this week. And then some other names, like off the radar here, Philip Morris and Altria MO, I think that's how you pronounce it. Both pretty much the same company. It's a spinoff. Not a big cigarette guy, right? But if you take a look at what they've done over the last couple of years, and it's a name I've been watching but haven't traded, the kind of the culture shift, right? And the weight loss side, right? Some people are doing the GLP-1 drugs, getting healthy. You've heard talks in some of these earnings calls, Boston Beer, even TAP, Molson Coors, they all have this kind of health component now. People trying to be more healthy, and you can see. There was liquor sales were down. Then you have non-alcoholic beers. You see all these brands. You go to the supermarket now; they're everywhere, right? And where before it used to be when someone was drinking like an O'Doul's, it was like the only option for people. Now there's tons of options, and I think that's more of a function of what's going on with the culture in general, right? Some people don't drink, right? Funny, The Economist had an article this past weekend about why you should drink. Great ideas are made when to drink. I'll see if I can post a link, but that was a funny one. I'm not saying people might not have revelations when they drink, but all right. So needless to say, look at this kind of consolidated last week. And then if it does an all-time high break, I think it trades up near 180 in the coming weeks. Great story. 45% or so of their business is now outside their core brand, like they did Marlboro cigarettes, which I think is like the largest cigarette um, company, largest, most popular by far. Like I think the more sales of Marlboro than the other 9 brands combined below it. But their sales of those cigarettes only encompass like 40% or less of their business now. And now it's those like Zyn nicotine pouches, and they have vapors. I think they bought that company who's one of the first vapors that got FDA approved. But needless to say, you take a look and I'm like, this looks like it wants to break out. So don't be surprised if I add some inexpensive calls. 175s look interesting for this week, and then the 180s for next week. I'll wait for the open to see how it trades. And last but not least, GameStop. It was up 2 cents last week for the entire week. If you just took the whole week and just did nothing, it was up 2 cents. Just hopefully the calm before the storm. Just frustrating to see the premiums coming out of the calls. And that's it, folks. Let's have another great week. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.